It was another quiet night at the office. No phone calls, no messages, nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics. We are the show! You want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, good afternoon and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. And of course, you can join the conversation for the next hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And our text line is up and running at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. It appears on the screen here in the studio in real time, and we try to work it into the conversation. And the station does broadcast 24/7, as do thousands of other radio stations on the TuneIn app. So you can take us anywhere or tell Alexa to play WCRN, and she'll do that, no questions asked. I'm also streaming the show on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show, so you can watch it on Facebook, X, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, and we do stream live to the Joe Mangiacotti channel on Rumble. Then later it's loaded up to Torch TV. So many ways to listen, many ways to watch. Social media, Joe Mangi Show. We're also streaming to the station Facebook page, WCRN 830 AM. If you haven't gone to that Facebook page, do me a favor, head over there, hit the like and follow button as we try to build up the content that's going in on there. So there's a lot to talk about today, a lot going on as usual. And I got to ask you, since when did enforcing law become controversial? Because based on these numbers, most Americans, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, you name it, across the board, guys, agree if you're a criminal and you're not a citizen, you don't belong in this country, period. It's not radical. It's not far right. It pretty much is common sense. And at times it's the polls are there. The numbers are there. The logic is there. According to a brand new Rasmussen poll, a whopping 56% of likely voters, that's over half the country, guys, right? It says it's very important, that 56%, very important to deport criminal migrants. And only 5% says it's not important at all. 5%. That's actually less than your average margin of error. And here's where it gets interesting. 43% of Democrats say deportation of criminal migrants is very important. So this isn't just conservative issue. It's a national law and order consensus that's going on with this. But while voters are united, Washington, once again, is off doing its own thing, totally disconnected, in a bubble, not really understanding. And who they support or who they go to defend, I think speaks to what they view you as, what they think the average American is, the rubes out here, especially the flyover country. So the criminal migrant poll, 56% of the voters want criminal migrants deported. 5% disagree. Again, margin of error. 43 in Democrats. Majorities of Hispanic and Black voters agree also with that stance. So the takeaway, this isn't about race. It's not about it's about safety. It's about sovereignty in the border, and the border being a sovereign border. So Trump's message on deportation, he's hammering the issue on social media. From Truth Social, how can Biden let millions of criminals into our country, yet I'm expected to go through a lengthy legal process one by one? That's the argument, that there was no due process for 11 million to come in. But they want to tie up the courts in the billions of dollars in taxpayer money in trials and probation. Here's the thing. If you came in illegally, not through one of the points of entry, in criminal, we used to actually detain them. Remember the detaining families and keeping them in cages, which Obama built, by the way. And he has the record for number of deportations, but no one was screaming about due process under the under the Obama administration. And if they're actually detained, they got to get the hearing within 35 days. But if you just give them the order to report or appear, that's 5, 6, 7 years before they have to deal with that. And then they're probably going to be married, maybe have an anchor baby or two. Nobody wants to start deporting them at that point. So this is all done. This was done very clearly to just open the borders, let as many in, slow down the process, drag out, make sure they get established here, harder to really justify deporting them. Because even though they haven't got to the point that they allow them to vote yet, they do count right now on the census. And that we've talked about this. I've talked about this. If you're counting non-citizens on the census, which are usually in blue cities and blue states, it's actually increasing the population, which of course in turn keeps the House of Rep seats there. And it doesn't shift with the true shift in population of citizens. So this is what now they're trying to slow the Trump administration down with the deportations, assuming they'll be back in power someday down the road, and they'll make whoever is to be will be the, amnesty across the board, a Ronald Reagan executive order type thing. Trump warns you can't give every criminal alien a trial. It would take 200 years. That's the point. The current system isn't just broken. It's totally insane with this. Bukele in the Oval last week, speaking of, I hate that term, truth but to power, but El Salvador's president, Bukele, met with Trump and made it plain. His quote, right? You cannot just free the criminals and think crime is going to go down magically. Imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans. The argument from the left often doesn't even count the citizens, the victims, constantly. And 43% of Americans strongly agree with Bukele. He's not wrong. Crime is oppression. Enforcing the law is liberation. We also have these Democrats running down to El Salvador, getting on the bandwagon. And again, this goes back to why are they picking this Kilmar Garcia as their poster boy? The wife beating MS-13 gang member with human trafficking record. You got a Democrat in Florida, Rep. Frost, along with 3 other progressive lawmakers in El Salvador, not to thank Bukele for jailing gang members. Oh, no. They're there to pressure him to release Kilmar, a confirmed MS-13 gang member. In the left, I keep saying he's not. No one. Well, first of all, Von Hollis there, he never even asked the question. Yet 2 judges who heard evidence and arguments determined he is MS-13 gang member. I mean, the tattoo across the knuckles is a pretty good indication. And this is a guy whose own wife handwritten out the police report that he beat her. And pictures were taken and were all marked up. So nobody's asking the question. The RNC, this is great. Sometimes the Republicans have a sense of humor, guys, right? Remember the DNA test they offered to pay for Warren? But now they're saying we'll pay for the travel and accommodations for any Democrat who wants to go to El Salvador and meet with Kilmar. As long as you stream it live, take plenty of selfies, we'll be happy to pay for it. That's pretty funny. Now, DHS has already confirmed Garcia's gang ties, right? 2 immigration judges ruled the same, but Frost and friends say he could be released because, well, we're not really sure. So you got to listen to the court and follow the court when it really works out for you. But when you have 2 judges who confirm Garcia's gang ties, you're not really sure. Hypocrisy, consistency, folks, on that one. Then it gets worse because Bukele calls out Frost for a 2016 tweet that seemed to glorify gang culture. And the tweet said, "The F word, with my gang gone, get you spilled." So messing with my gang is going to get you hurt, I guess is the translation to that. Frost says it's just a rap lyric. Maybe. But it's a bad look when you're advocating for gang members while quoting gang lingo. Again, somebody needs to be on the staff of these people, a normal person, to say, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe that isn't how you should respond to that. You certainly don't want a picture of that out there on the internet because it's out there forever. And of course, we've got the Tesla vandal in Minnesota. He's getting diversion. This is Tim Waltz staffer caught vandalizing Tesla in broad daylight. Multiple camera angles and so forth. Well, he's not being charged. The feckless DA out there is going to go to diversion. So let me get this straight. If he vandalized someone's property, $20,000, he did 6 cars, all on camera, $20,000 in damage, but no charges. But in Minnesota, if you're a law-abiding citizen questioning your government, you're labeled a domestic threat. Again, this is about law and order, and of course, double standards here. All right, folks, we're going to have to take our first break here on the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Remember, you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000 to get into the studio. Also streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, X, LinkedIn profile, and we're on Rumble, on the Joe Mangiacotti Show on Rumble. So plenty of ways to watch in real time. Join the conversation at 508-871-7000. Text line running at 617-297-8388. Stick with us, folks. We'll be back in 2 and 10 with the second segment of the Wednesday edition.
Looking for guidance as you face a future on Social Security? It's hard to figure out on your own, but MedicareAdvisors.com is a completely independent insurance agency specializing in Medicare insurance planning. We work with the top insurance companies so we can offer our clients the best coverage for them. We design plans with a focus on low costs, which we combine with personalized insurance advice aimed at helping our clients make better informed decisions. Russ Swallow is a certified senior advisor and a licensed insurance advisor. He's been helping clients with their health insurance needs since 1970. And after a failed attempt at retirement, he created the Medicare Advisors in 2014. Russ concluded that since Medicare is health insurance, he might as well put his almost 50 years of health insurance experience to good use, as 75,000 people reach age 65 in Massachusetts every year, and they can use some help. Call Russ today at 508-831-0805. Put his years of personal experience to work for you as you try to unravel the complexities of Social Security.
Polar Park is the place to play, so treat yourself to a private suite at the best ballpark in AAA. Suite rentals are the best way to enjoy a fully catered and climate-controlled experience at the park. Whether you choose to watch the game from inside of the suite or out in your seats, it's the ultimate experience for a special occasion. Visit WooSox.com or call 508-500-8888 to reserve your suite today.
The best Italian cuisine served by some of the nicest folks you'll ever meet is at Ziti's Italian Trattoria. It's fine Italian cooking at the Speedway Shopping Center, 290 Turnpike Road in Westboro. It's like sitting down with your family for an authentic home-cooked Italian meal. From intimate dinners to catering for events of all sizes. From pizzas and calzones to classic Italian dinners. Every meal at Ziti's is one you'll remember. Head on down to Ziti's, 290 Turnpike Road in Westboro.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second segment here of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show at AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, you can join the conversation for the remainder of the hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And the text line is up and running at 617-297-8388. You can text just like you would any other number. It appears on the screen in real time in the studio. So I guess the question is constitutional crisis or criminal compassion when you get to Gilmar Garcia, 29-year-old illegal immigrant. He's from El Salvador, back in El Salvador. He had been granted withholding removal status back in 2019 by an immigration judge due to a potential gang violence. So the gang rival, Barrio 18, supposedly would harm him, if not kill him, if he returned. To me, doesn't that further show that he's in fact a gang member? And despite this, Garcia was deported. Now, originally it was called administrative error, but there are actions that happened between 2019 and a couple months ago, guys, which changes that, like beating the wife. 508-871-7000. Let's go to the phones. Mark is waiting patiently. Hey, Mark, what say you?
How long is it to the midterms? Federal.
Just under 2 years.
That would be what, the year?
Well, you figure November 4, so 8 months, a year and 8 months. Yeah. November 2026. You got it.
You know, I'd say to Pam Bondi, you're running out of time, lady. Because you got to start coming up with some subpoenas. You got to come up with some indictments. I mean, Judy Garland was putting them out like popcorn. So was Letitia James, who was now under investigation herself by the U.S. Justice Department. And you hear nothing, absolutely nothing about it on the mainstream media, but the investigation continues. Now that I said that, you know, she's got to start doing something. I mean, come on.
So, Mark, I just want to make sure. Merrick Garland is Judy Garland, right?
That's right.
Okay, I never heard that one. That's funny. Yes, I agree.
All right.
Right?
Can I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
The statement?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard it yesterday. I was listening to Uncle Howie, you know, of Once I Speak in Boston.
Yep.
And he's doing his show, and he does a clip. He loves to play clip after clip after clip. So anyways, I'm listening to one of his clips, and I forget the name of the representative, female representative. She's either a House, she's either a seated Congresswoman or a U.S. Senator. Either one. She's a prominent member of the left, of the Democratic Party. You know what that woman said?
What's that?
If we get any kind of majority in the House or the Senate as a result of the midterms, she said we will immediately begin impeachment proceedings against the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. I heard her right on the thing. That's what she said. Flat out, right there. There you go. They get a majority immedately. So that's what people got to start thinking about. And that's what the RNC has got to start thinking about. And that's what Pam Bondi's got to start thinking about, because she said it flat out. I wish I remember her name. I don't. But she said that the impeachment proceedings will start, she said, immediately. So you can see where they're going.
Yep. All right, Mark, thank you for the call. 100%. I do appreciate it. Yeah, look, I have no doubt that, I mean, there was, Danelle Green start again impeachment proceedings and paperwork before he was sworn in again, which they did in the first time. Like, I have no doubt if the if the Democrats were in charge of the House, that we'd already be seeing 1 and 2. Of course they're going to do that. Of course they are. Because impeachment's no longer has the integrity it used to have, because it's just political. They're not freaking out over an act that they did, especially if you go back to the impeachment about the Ukraine thing. I said it then, and I'm saying it now. At no time, you listen to, because they released the transcript, remember? He asked Zelensky, do you mind if I release this? 16 people were on that call. And Inman or Vindman thought it was wrong. And when I saw the transcript in the nature of the phone call, my take on that was very clear. I thought it would have been derelict if the current president didn't bring up the information about the corruption going on there and asked him to, and that's what Trump did. I'm hearing all this information about some shenanigans going on. Would you work with my attorney general on this? That's what Trump asked Zelensky. Of course, because he was talking about Biden, they shut it down. As if he's got a license, because he was going to be the candidate, that he has a license to commit felonies and racketeering and shaking people down. It would have been derelict not to ask what's going on with this. For crying out loud, the predecessor in Trump's first term, Barack Obama, when asked for the $1 billion loan guarantee, said, in essence, the same thing. You're the corruption capital of the world. So before we give you $1 billion, you got to clean it up, and I'm going to send over the anti-corruption task force. And he put Joe Biden in charge of it. Fox Hen House guys. So I don't think what they went after Trump for is crazy. On both impeachments, by the way. And now they're taking issue. They're right. The key words here is the due process. Due process. We don't care about due process in any other situation, but it serves a purpose for us now. And by the way, just as a side, I got to go into this. So the new, I don't even know what this is, Democratic strategy. Have you heard this? Dark woke. Dark woke. That's the movement. The new Democratic strategy. And didn't we have Dark Brandon? That went over well. Oh, that went over well. So now, after the brutal loss of the 2024 elections, Democrats are searching for some kind of strategy to reconnect with voters. Examining what's popular and taking the common sense position and changing, direction of the party, that couldn't possibly be the answer. No. Because they don't talk and listen. Maybe they do talk, but they don't listen. The far left bubble there still don't understand Trump's appeal and why people support him. So now enter this so-called dark woke phenomenon. An online-born, sharp-tongued, combative approach meant to appeal to younger, digital-savvy voters. Because again, Dark Biden went over so well, man. Remember the speech that he gave with the mood lighting and the red and the that was just creepy. The concept emerged from meme culture, basically, right? So you think Doc Brandon and has been adopted by certain Democrat figures as a way to shed the image of political correctness, right? They think that if they can come off as this edgy, and basically they're swearing, right? This is what this comes down to. Dark woke is swearing, using bad words. But if they're not organic, and if they're not authentic, and when Trump uses bad words, he swears. But he swears to the point that it doesn't raise a red flag. It doesn't blip on the radar. It's conversational. I don't know the right way to put this, but there are some people who, when they swear, it's just part of their vernacular. It fits the moment. Watching Elizabeth Warren and some of these, and even Crockett, trying to be edgy and swearing, it's not authentic. It's not natural. And if you have to swear and use bad words based on a memo that to do this, it's going to come across. The New York Times reports Democrats experimenting with being rude but strategic, aiming for viral moments in cultural reach. Now, they might get the viral moment, but not for the reasons that they think they're going to get it. So some are describing this as a counter to GOP's raw populism and Trump-style bluntness. Again, if it's not authentic, it isn't going to sail, guys. Take the example, right? Crockett, the Democrat from Texas, is the current face of the trend. Known for harsh rhetoric, profanity-laced comments, flashy media moments. Quotes from his strategist suggest the left feels trapped in respectable or respectability politics. Well, Republicans freely grab attention. Again, authentic versus not authentic. So they're thinking here that Crockett embodies this dark woke, uses social media, viral moments, gains her visibility. Wisconsin Democratic Party digital creator says Dems are stuck saying boring pablum because they're afraid to say anything because their own party, their base, the far left of the party will eat their own and not bat an eyelash. Another strategist, Brock, says young staffers want to push by any means necessary. And then you've got mainstream media playing a role in this, especially outlets like the Times, New York Times, and late night shows, Kimmel, are amplifying this trend. It's not authentic, guys. Critics do argue that it is a new tactic, just a louder version of long-standing democratic incivility. Right? Remember, calling Mitt Romney a racist, to Bush-Hitler comparisons, Trump-Hitler comparison. So detractors say it's style over substance, more theater, less policy. The question lingers, can someone like Crockett rally independents, or is this just preaching to the choir, to their own people again and again? Here's the thing, folks. When Trump got loud, it wasn't just about attitude. He tapped into real frustration. These dark woke Democrats, they're playing the role, but they aren't listening to the American people. All right, folks, we're going to take a mid-show break here. We'll be back in 2 and 10. Stick with us.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearn. Here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. We've got highs inland in the lower 70s today with some 60s at the coastline. It's going to stay mostly sunny. We've got some lighter winds today, some lower humidity. So it's all coming together to be a gorgeous spring day. In fact, it feels more like June than April outside this afternoon. Keep in mind that we do have a little warming trend through the end of the week. You're going to see a few more clouds Thursday and a Friday, but the next widespread rain should hold off until Saturday. I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearn. You can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
More live and local radio is next. Stay tuned to Radio Central 830 WCRN.
When you're planning your wedding or special event, make sure you and your guests arrive safely and on time. Choose the best. AA Transportation has over 600 vehicles and a team of licensed professional drivers, making them the largest transportation company in Central Mass. AA Transportation delivers world-class service with a personal touch, ensuring the transportation of your wedding or special event goes perfectly. AA Limousine Services can transport wedding parties up to 14 people in our luxurious stretch Cadillac Escalade limos. We provide guest shuttles up to 55 passengers in our activity coaches or buses, so your guests get home safely after celebrating your special day. For custom wedding or event transportation, call AA Limousine Services, 508-791-9100, 508-791-9100. or visit us online at aatransportation.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, you can join the conversation for the remainder of the hour at 508-871-7000 or text at 617-297-8388. And we do stream the show on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, Facebook's Twitter, X, all that, or the station Facebook page and YouTube channel, or at Rumble at the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Let's go to the phones. Ken's been waiting patiently. Hey, Ken, what say you?
Hi, Joe. I have a message for Mark. If he thinks the congressman or woman made a threat to President Trump to impeach for, I guess, the third time, you got to follow Jamie Raskin, Mark. No, he's made a threat not just to Trump, but to anybody who supports Trump. That would be me, you, Ted, all of us.
Oh, well, don't we have to be put into re-education camps? I thought that was the Trump supporters, right? We needed to be rounded up and put into the re-education camps. So
one of the targets, absolutely. Send us all to Harvard, I guess.
Yeah. What's on your mind?
But here's the serious. We are at a juncture here where it's time for, yes, impeachment of a judge. And Boasberg's the top candidate. Let's get it on. And guess who's the judiciary chair in the House?
I thought it was Comer.
No. Jim Jordan.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Jordan. Comer is doing the investigation.
Right. I think he's like banking.
Yeah. He was a banker. He's on the board of some big bank before he went into Congress. But yeah, Jim Jordan is very good at that stuff. And the thing is, I mean, Ken, I have two issues. One is, how are these judges getting assigned to these both Trump citizen cases and presidential, executive orders they're fighting, because they're not being selected from a normal pool, right? So I think that needs to be looked at, because if you're messing with that, right, that's got to be illegal. There's got to be a charge here, because all of a sudden judges who aren't even in the pool are getting assigned to Trump. And the same judge is getting case after case after case. It's statistically impossible to happen, Ken.
Well, that's just one of many things to get them out. I mean, with Boasberg, literally the Supreme Court slapped him down, said, bug off, and he came right back. Refused to back off.
Yeah.
So we have to have a law and order here, folks. You can't have runaway judge dictatorship.
Yeah. His wings have to be clipped.
And here's the bottom line. We have this massive contradiction. You cite a poll that, yes, the public wants deportation by huge numbers, but by likewise similarly large numbers, the public doesn't want anybody to disobey a judge. The president has to obey what they tell the president. Whoa. We have a contradiction here. The judges despise the president's policies that he's been elected to pursue.
Yeah.
Hello, public.
Yeah.
It's time to choose. You can't stand in the middle. We got to this $36 trillion deficit because, we want all the spending that comes our way, but we want a balanced budget too. Contradiction.
Yeah. No, I agreed. Look, the judges, this has been way over their skis, exceeding the scope of their authority. But again, we go back to, Ken, the Trump derangement syndrome, that what was acceptable for other presidents to do, whether it was deporting hundreds of thousands of people, or actually 1.3 million or something under Obama, it was fine. There's no due process issue here. Everything's okay. The cages that they showed during the Trump administration were actually built in 2014 under the Biden administration. We know all this now. It's all out there. It's why we don't, as a population, we don't trust the media anymore, because they're not truthful about anything, and everything's slanted. So these judges have got to be reined in, these district judges and appellate level judges too. And it's got to be done through statute. Congress has got to do the action here. The courts exist because Congress and the executive branch. And they're just way out over. You know, Bosberg is out of control as far as I'm concerned.
It's time to pull back the veil and find out what is this all about.
Yeah.
Why are the judges acting the way they are? It's quite simple. The war is on, folks. They want to transform the nation in the manner in which the previous administration was doing, by letting in over 10 million people and then refusing to put them back.
But that's a move.
Battle.
That's a move to get back power. Now it's to get back power. It was being designed to keep power. I mean, they really wanted to get it so that we flooded the country with illegals who then counted in census, then kept the power in the blue cities and blue states. And they were just headed to a government and a system where no Republican would have been able to win. I mean, they want to do away with the Electoral College. They want to win by popular vote. They want voting to continue to be very loosey-goosey, no ID, no paper ballots, all of that. So that from now on, our leaders would be anointed, would be appointed, not elected. And the only way to get back is to get back to very secure elections, meaning voter ID, paper ballots, nothing connected to the internet, and 50 smaller elections, not a national federal election.
It's flood the zone, cloud and pivot, just as Mike Wade taught us back in 2008 when Barack Obama became president.
Yeah.
This isn't a new game, folks. It's just now we're in chapter 9. We're about in the 8th and 9th inning. Where okay, folks, it's one way or the other.
Yeah.
These two systems cannot coincide. They just can't.
No, they can't. And that's why we're getting to endgame. And when Trump says the country would have been lost, as we know it anyway, if he didn't win this time, I think that's true. It would have been lost as we know it. The only thing keeping us from the brink now is this, and they're fighting it tooth and nail. But they don't have the Democrats are all over the place, right? You've got David Hogg, new vice chair wanting to spend $20 million, which you know is going to be $30 million, to unseat sitting Democrats, which is just against the entire job description, kid. You got AOC with 47% approval over Schumer. I think is he 26 or 28? I think he's 28, right? Yeah, he's 28. You know, does she run to unseat him?
How old? You asked how old AOC is?
She just hit the lead. She's legally can be Senate. She's 30, over 30.
No, she's 35.
Oh, so she could be president.
President last year.
She could, she can even run for president in 28. Which I wouldn't put it beyond her. Because people who live in that world of social media, like she does, they think, even though there's only, relatively, it's a small percentage of people in the country actually on social media, but it seems like everyone is just because of the way it works. And she thinks that popularity on social media means she's something in life, you know, with the average American. Just if you don't understand that, look at these influencers when they get pulled over by the police or whatever. What do they say? Do you know who I am? I got 1 million followers, this and that. They think that means something. Well, she does too. I don't know how well she's going to play outside of California and New York. But let them let them do it.
Joe, you mentioned David Hogg. I heard a good one yesterday. Somebody said, I'd like to see an arm wrestling contest between him and Carville.
I wouldn't count Carville out. He might break the bone, though. He might have brittle bone, Ken.
I think Carville's about 6'1". I put Hogg at maybe 5'6", maybe 140 pounds, if that.
I think Carvel may have had one or two scraps in his life. I don't think Dave Hogg, other than, look, I get it. I don't want the text. I understand he was the victim of the Parkland shooting and all that, but I don't think he was a tough and rumble kid growing up. But that's just an opinion.
But it is an 80-year-old versus a 25-year-old.
This is true too. Like I said, brittle bone disease maybe is going to do the downfall for the lizard. All right, Ken, final word.
No, the adventure continues with every passing day.
Key thing, disappeared. Nobody's disappeared, and it's called deportation, folks, not disappear. All right, 508-871-7000 for the remainder of the hour. You can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. You can text at 617-297-8388. It appears on the screen in real time, but we're going to have to take our third and final break. Come back for the fourth segment in 2 and 10, folks. Back in a moment. Come on. All right, folks, welcome back to the fourth and final segment here on the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. And you can join the conversation for the remainder of the hour, several minutes here, at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000, or text us at 617-297-8388. And don't forget, we always stream on Facebook, X, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, and of course, Rumble on the Joe Mangiacotti channel. Geez, Mother's Day, a couple weeks, right? Is it a couple weeks? That's coming up. I don't know. My mother's gone, but I have sisters that I usually have to, they're all mothers, so that usually means a bunch of flowers are sent out. I don't know. But one of the busiest restaurant days. Absolutely. Anyway, 508-871-7000. So, student loan, guys. The accountability is returning on that issue. And it's the end of the era of free passes on this. And it's about time, because this was one of the issues that was going on in the Biden administration that really bothered me. And it wasn't forgiven. It was being transferred to the taxpayers. So the background on that, guys, is the COVID era student loan deferment program was originally introduced to offer temporary relief. Now, circumstances, as you can in other loan situations, mortgages, you can defer mortgage payment here and there in your mortgages. Sometimes debt that incurs on condo fees or taxes can be put on the back end of a mortgage. It absolutely happens all the time. And considering that the government was shutting down businesses and forcing people out of their jobs if they didn't get the jab, this is a whole other conversation. There's a good argument to have a deferment program during COVID-19. COVID is long over. And despite pandemic conditions are gone or easing, President Biden, he extended that deferment and attempted sweeping loan forgiveness. And the court said, no, you're executive, you're not congressional. Your branch doesn't control the purse strings. You can't do that. You can't take taxpayer money and pay somebody else's debt off. Because he wasn't paying off the plumber electrician's F-150 payment. He was just telling American taxpayers, I want you to pay off the kids I like, or the ones I think are going to be very progressive and liberal because they're coming out of colleges. I'm assuming that was the thought process. And again, probably not Biden, but who was responsible for it. In 2023, SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, ruled that Biden's broad forgiveness plan was just simply unconstitutional. And he didn't care. Where's the threat? Where's the impeachment? Where's the due process? Where's the get to honor the court? Didn't hear any of that from the left. Nobody. Federal student loan debt has grown to over $60 billion annually between 21 and 24. And only 30% of loans were being actively repaid due to continued forbearances and manipulated repayment programs. 38%. And Barack Obama took the student loan process over, because that was the other part of this. What are the interest rates on these government student loans versus private industry? Because the private industry was much more competitive. They were much more competitive. Plus, let's face it, they like giving credit. They like getting the student loans and then extending credit cards and loans, car loans to young collegiate students, because they've got decades to pay their debt off. You can walk through the quad of most universities and fill out half a dozen credit card applications by the time you get to the other side. Right? Every graduation, we're going to see coming up very shortly as colleges are going to graduate, right? All kinds of student loan, auto loan programs, Toyota discounts. They want you to buy your first new car. Because if they can get you on their credit card, if they can get you financing a car through one of their auto loan programs, they might be able to swing a customer for life or a 30, 40-year span. So only 30% of loans are actively being repaid. Linda McMahon, now taking the lead in education policy, she's announced the end to this, to the zero interest, zero accountability policy. On May 5th, or beginning May 5th, I should say, the Department of Education will restart loan repayments for 1.8 million borrowers, resume collections on default loans, which were paused, enforce consequences like credit score drops and even wage garnishments for non-payment. So this is going to kick in May 5th. 1.8 million borrowers now have to start paying back. In those that were in collection, that will resume, and they will go after wage garnishment. So borrowers will now be held responsible for repaying their loans for the money they borrowed, that they signed for. Support tools are being offered as well, though. And taxpayers, right, previously burdened with the cost of unpaid student loan, that's going to be taken off the taxpayer, guys. Not their job. Because you've got people who, A, didn't go to college because they didn't want to or couldn't take on that debt. And then you got people who did take on the debt, but have been paying the part of that 38%, or they paid their loans off, or mom and dad sacrificed. Mom and dad worked 1 and 2 jobs each. They scaled back if they even took family vacations. They didn't have the super duper cable package. They drove the same car for 12 years. They did what they needed to do to be able to send their child or children off to college and pay those bills. I loved when a reporter asked Elizabeth Warren, well, I paid my child's tuition off, do I get some money back for that? And she, thought that was a strange question because she doesn't even get how unfair this is and what she's doing. Now, college and university has been criticized for profiting off inflation tuition enabled by easy federal loans access, and rightly so. Because if you look at the rate of tuition has increased far greater than any other item or service in inflation. And that has a lot to do, one, with the very bloated administrative layer at universities, but it also has to do with the fact that money was easier. It was more plentiful for students to get. So as long as they could get it, we might as well take it. So shame on the universities, and I think the universities need to have a stake in this when they charge a total of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 for the education, and it's worthless, so they can't get employed for a decent wage afterwards. Nothing comes back to the university at all. And maybe the brick and mortar schools are running their course. And more of the Phoenix and Washington Governors Union and WGU and all that might be more of the answer. I don't know. Just a thought. But the Department of Education, realigning with court rulings and restoring fiscal responsibility on this issue. So Biden's extended pause in field forgiveness plan, seen by critics as a political ploy to win youth support, didn't really work out well. Right, because we're seeing the largest young conservative movement, maybe ever, but a long time. What generation are we on now? What are the 18 to 22? Are they Z? Whatever that is, that early 20s, yeah, and even older. Big conservative, in religion, by the way. Christian anyway, that's interesting, but big conservative movement. A lot of young people, and it's kind of coming out. Trump's second term has seemed to make it okay not to hide in the closet at the universities anymore. So this idea of trying to buy votes with deferred tuition for tuition forgiveness did not work out the way the Biden people thought it was going to work. But a little more criticism on these colleges. Many programs offer little market value, and these institutions are just amassing massive endowments. Massive endowments that keep adding money to that. I've described Harvard over and over again as a hedge fund with a college attached. They're into the 52, 54 billion range, somewhere in there. It's just a massive money machine. And there are moral hazards with this, guys. It suggests a culture where debts were viewed as optional. And that is risking long-term economic and ethical erosion. You signed on the line for that money. You didn't have to do that. You could have gone to community college. You could have taken night courses. You could have taken online courses. You could have done a lot of different things. But that's the path you chose, and that's the path you finance and deal with. That's the way it works. And the impact on this is going to restore the concept that a loan is a contract, not a campaign promise. It's going to reintroduce the idea of responsibility and accountability, and essential to preserving trust in federal programs. This affects nearly 2 million borrowers immediately, with larger financial implications for the national budget and the education system, of course. And signals future reforms targeting higher education institutions directly, likely to push transparency and cost containment, which is a big aspect of this. If student loans are rarely dischargeable in bankruptcy and have no collateral, how do we create fairness for those who do not pay their debts on time? Should colleges be held financially responsible for promoting degrees that have little to no job market value? Look, we're running against the clock, and we're not talking about punishing kids who wanted an education. We're talking about bringing back accountability, fairness to the taxpayers, stopping the cycle where politicians promise freebies they can't deliver and schools profit with no risk. That's not just common sense. That's a patriotic stewardship, folks. That's going to wrap up the Wednesday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Follow me on social media at Joe Mangi. All right, guys, Joe out.